Doctor, thanks for being here. Merry Christmas to you.
Hey, Merry Christmas to you.
So there is all this confusion right now surrounding tests. It's ramping up. It's coupled with this new variant. So let's start with the tests, right? The Biden administration says they're going to produce and make available at-home tests, but how reliable are they?
Well, it depends on at what stage in the infection you test yourself. Let's hypothetically say that you're exposed to someone with coronavirus, and then you learn that they had coronavirus and you go home and test yourself the same day. Well, that would typically be too soon because the virus has to replicate and basically you get what's called an increase in the viral load over the next 2 to 3 days. So it's a good idea to wait a couple of days before you test, because if you test too early, you'll get what's called a false negative, meaning that the test showed negative, but you have coronavirus. But if you wait 2 to 3 days and you test, then some of the reports are showing about an 85% sensitivity, which is pretty good.
Okay, yeah, because we're hearing about these cases of people testing negative once, twice, even 3 times, and then later testing positive. So it's confusing to know how we can be certain of our status, and especially when it comes to spreading the virus to others, because maybe we're not feeling the symptoms that dramatically.
Well, that's a big problem with this Omicron variant. The symptoms typically are turning out to be less severe, mild to moderate. So someone can have symptoms very mild, like maybe just a little runny nose, and think they only have allergies, but they could actually have coronavirus. The problem is an individual that has these very mild symptoms, maybe they've been vaccinated and boosted, but they had that breakthrough infection. Over these holidays, they might go visit their grandmother or aunt that's older and maybe over 65 or have a lot of chronic medical conditions. And now this is a vulnerable person and they contract coronavirus and they can lose their life. That's why it's so important that we really, really understand that we have to test. And if you get a negative test, it's advised to test maybe 1 or 2 days later just to make sure. But if you have symptoms, then it's probably a good idea to go ahead, if you get a negative test, to go visit a medical facility so you can get that molecular test, which is much more sensitive.
And even that is taking a long time, if you can even get in some instances. Okay, so we're talking a lot about traveling this holiday season. So what should we do when we're traveling? Also, when we're gathering, should we take the test right before we fly? Do we take it after we land? What's the most effective time period to really know what's happening?
Well, I read a New York Times article just before going on, and I looked at a lot of different reports from other sources. What's being recommended is if you're going to travel, you want to test a couple of days before you travel. And if you can test on the day of your departure, it's a good idea before you even leave the house. This will best give you the best assurance that there's a low probability that you're positive. Now, note that getting a negative test doesn't protect you from contracting coronavirus from someone else. It helps so that you can protect from passing it on to other people if you have it. When you get to your destination, it's a good idea to test maybe 1, 2, or even up to 3 or 4 days after you arrive at your destination. That way you can better ensure that you didn't contract coronavirus during your trip.
So now that we have the vaccines available and a promising new pill that's available, do you think 2022 could be finally the year that COVID becomes something like the flu, that just exists, that we live with it, but that it's not life-altering?
We can only hope. I mean, with these new treatments, we have the vaccinations. The vaccinations have proven that the data is showing that if you get vaccinated, you can still get a breakthrough infection. If you get a booster, you can still get a breakthrough infection, but your antibodies in your body can fight it off so much more effectively than someone that's not been vaccinated and has not been boosted. Also, we're looking at the monoclonal antibody treatment. We do it in our clinic. It's very effective. And now we're getting these pills, another weapon in our arsenal that we can use to fight coronavirus. So things are looking better, but we have to understand we have to keep pushing for people to get vaccinated, because if you'll note, whenever we get the different variants that are very dangerous, they're coming mostly from areas with low vaccination rates. These are almost like breeding grounds. So we have to really, really push for as many people to get vaccinated in the United States and other countries as well, especially countries with low resources, so we can cut down on these mutations and get through this coronavirus pandemic.
All right, Dr. Quinn, thank you for joining us. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you, and thank you.
And Gary is back. Winter